This year's midterm elections could tip the balance of power in Congress. Republicans need net gains of 1 Senate seat and 4 House seats to take control of both chambers.
During the midterm election, a lot is at stake, but most importantly, the most watched thing here in Washington is the battle for the control of Congress.
WSJ national politics reporter Joshua Jamerson explains how Democrats and Republicans have been shaping the conversation around the economy, abortion, gun violence, immigration, and student loan forgiveness, with the goal of persuading voters. Americans are feeling the pain of inflation as they face the biggest price increases in 4 decades.
Grocery bills, gas prices, things like that, where money is impacting people's everyday lives. I would say that is definitely something I hear from voters when I'm traveling on the campaign trail.
Some Republican candidates, including Senator Ron Johnson, who is seeking re-election in Wisconsin, claim that the party controlling Washington now is responsible for rising prices.
Democrats are printing trillions of dollars to pay for their massive deficit spending. Inflation is the Democrats' tax on the middle class.
That's what you hear mostly from Republicans, is that simply by curtailing what Joe Biden and Democrats are able to spend, that our presence in Washington in majorities would have a positive impact on your finances.
Democrats have countered that there is more at work when it comes to inflation than just government policies. Candidates, including Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock, point to supply chain issues and their willingness to take on what they see as price gouging.
What if I told you shipping container companies have been making record profits while prices have been skyrocketing on you? That's why I'm pushing to hold them accountable.
Democrats have tried to explain this and explain how they might ease some of those inflationary pressures, but there's a saying in politics that it's a lot harder to explain, and if you're explaining, you're already starting not in a position of strength, and that's something Democrats have tried to combat.
The leak of a Supreme Court draft opinion signaling the court's intention to overturn Roe v. Wade made abortion a campaign issue even before the court released its decision in late June.
That definitely rippled across the campaign trail. I happened to be in Georgia with a few Republican candidates there, and they immediately started talking about how this was a victory for the Republicans.
Republican leaders argued that this long-sought victory will energize their own voters.
The argument to voters was, this is what your vote for Republicans got. This long-held, decade-long effort to get constitutional originalists with more of a conservative view on the Supreme Court to make these decisions.
Democrats are hoping this will inject urgency into the midterm elections.
A woman's right to choose reproductive freedom is on the ballot in November.
A survey of American adults shows increased support for abortion access. According to a WSJ poll, some 57% of respondents said a woman should be able to obtain legal abortions for any reason.
How that relates to a political issue is a big question, and one that I don't think we'll get an answer to until November.
A string of mass shootings in the U.S. reignited the debate around laws to curb gun violence and has led to the passage of the first major federal change to gun laws in decades.
God willing, it's going to save a lot of lives.
While many congressional Democrats support aspects of the bipartisan legislation that includes funding for red flag laws and mental health programs, some don't think the package goes far enough.
Now, of course, this bill doesn't do everything we need, not by a mile. We all understand this is a compromise.
Democrats generally would agree that universal background checks is something that they would like to see. And then underneath that, there's some support for banning certain assault weapons.
But many congressional Republicans have insisted that Democrats' efforts to change U.S. gun laws or further restrict access to firearms is not the answer.
Their so-called solutions wouldn't have stopped these mass murders, and they know this.
In addition to issues of shared interest among Republicans and Democrats, the two parties also have their individual focuses. Republican candidates are betting immigration is one voters care about. Republican Representative Kevin McCarthy, who is the frontrunner to become House Speaker if the party wins control in November, argues the Biden administration's immigration policy has allowed dangerous drugs to flow into the U.S.
Fentanyl is now the #1 killer to Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. There is no longer a few border cities. Every city in America is now a border city.
It really is about this idea that the southern border is porous, and Democrats won't stop people from illegally crossing into the country.
Democrats, however, have been talking about student loan forgiveness. As a candidate, President Biden proposed forgiving $10,000 of federal student loan debt per borrower.
Democrats remember that, and they're kind of disappointed that it hasn't happened yet.
Biden is likely to decide on a student loan forgiveness plan later this summer, aimed in part at motivating young voters to cast ballots. But some Republicans are betting this will backfire and be met with resentment from many voters. Many also argue that forgiving student loan debt would add to the national debt and further fuel price rises.
Republicans counter, the economy is already really, really hot, and canceling student loan debt could just add more inflation. Republicans will say, if you send us to Washington, if you give us control of the House and the Senate, we can act as a check on this Joe Biden presidency.